Hello, everybody, and welcome to CubeCon 2025. It is my immense pleasure to be kicking Hall of Famer Gabriel Nassif. Gab, good evening for you. How's it going?
Hey Manny, hey everyone. Great, excited.
Yeah, me too. It's awesome to be a part of CubeCon. We have 4 days of incredible Cube action with some of what should be the most interesting, the most fun, the zaniest action, and it's just really going to be a lot of fun to see people enjoying themselves and also what these cube creators have come up with in the various lists. I know a bit of a spoiler for what's to come, but the first cube that you and I will be doing here in the prequel draft this morning is one of the wildest cubes that I've ever seen. So I'm just very excited to tackle it. And just to catch our viewers up, for those of you who may be uninitiated, who don't know what Cube is, of course, Cube is my favorite Magic the Gathering format. It's a collection of cards that are curated by the Cube creator to design what is essentially their own limited format. Designing Magic cards may be hard, but designing a format maybe a little less so, and it's definitely this form of artistic expression and just this creative outlet for people, whether it is something basic like the Magic Online Vintage Cube, or whether it gets into some of the wilder weeds that we'll explore this weekend, Gab.
Yeah, no, Cube is amazing, honestly. I'm not sure who's to credit for it originally. I've heard Gap saying Canadian, legend is maybe one of the people who started Cube. We used to basically play Cube all night. We would go to the local game store, play all day there, and then we'd go to someone's place during vacation and just basically cube all night, our version of the cube, and it was our favorite for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I have many memories or lack of memories of cubing overnight into a 6 a.m. go grab breakfast and call it a night. And, CubeCon is a celebration of maybe not exactly those unhealthy habits, but the spirit behind them, which is Cube as a format. It's a form of expression of what each individual person loves about Magic and try to bring that together alongside the feeling of community. And it's been happening in Madison since 2022. So I believe this is the fourth CubeCon, if I'm not mistaken. Everything is provided cards, lands, tokens, everything. So it's just a matter of people showing up, signing up, and really getting to experience everything the CubeCon has to offer.
Yeah, I know people have tried to get me to travel to the CubeCon. It sounds really fun, and yeah, you just get to play with iconic cards, the most powerful cards of all time. Sometimes, kind of depends. It's kind of what it started for us. We had a version was basically just one of every good card, and it wasn't exactly Q. It was like we called it Wagic, I guess, like Magic, but with a W, and it was basically like one of each good cards, and we draft like the whole thing, like 2,000 cards. We'd all have stacks of like 200 or 300 cards, and then you kind of played whatever. So there was like every possible combo. This is like obviously way more refined now. It's like the cube is smaller, and now people came up with the theme. Maybe a lot of you know the cube through Magic Online, where it's fairly similar. In spirit, it's just like kind of all the best cards of Vintage Cube. Um, but this is going to be a little different, and that first cube is going to be a treat, and yeah, no, tons of fun.
Yeah, we do have a vintage cube here this weekend, but that's not going to be until much later. As you can see, our main event structure here, we are on Thursday. We are on the prequel of the main event draft, so that's where we'll be kicking things off today. Players are still playing 4 points, and those points will matter as we get through to Saturday, going to that top 28 advancement. But for today, is less points than the rest of the weekend. We didn't really want to have too big of a punishment for players that weren't able to come extra early for Thursday. The main event does really kick things off tomorrow, but we do have that prequel main event draft today. Then Friday we'll have main event drafts 1 and 2, 3 and 4 on Saturday, and throughout all of it, players are gathering match points for wins, some match points for draws, none for losses, uh, bonus points for winning a pod, or as we like to call it, trophying. And there will be a tracker for trophies that players have earned. But at the end of it, at the end of that main draft for the top 128 players, will be advancing to the final fortune draft. That's what's going to start kicking off our playoff structure. And there's really no prediction for what kind of record players will need for making that cut, because the format here is a little less structured than maybe you and I are used to coming from the more competitive side of Magic. Players are signing up to draft cubes. They're not being assigned based on records. They're not guaranteed to face someone with the same record as them. So it really is a bit of a wild west of anything can sort of happen in each subsequent round. The idea of the weekend is fun, it's community, it's enjoyment, and at the end of the weekend, we're hoping players have drafted 7 or 8 different cubes and they've gotten this varied experience.
Yeah, the the players just get to pick the cubes they want to draft, and
Welcome back. Sorry about that minor outage. And yeah, you can get a look at the full coverage team that we do have here this weekend. Of course, it is my pleasure and honor to be kicking things off with Gab, but we do also have Arya Karamchandani, Ross Merriam, Brad Nelson, LSV himself, Luis Scott Vargas, Marshall Sutcliffe, Tannen Grace, and Mason Clark, all filling in throughout the weekend to do various shifts, various pairings, and bringing you all of the incredible cube action that we are going to be having throughout this week. And I do want to take a moment to, of course, shout out the cause that we are supporting this year. CubeCon is fundraising for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So a cause that is very near and dear to a lot of our hearts, especially all of us here at CubeCon. So something that we wanted to support and raise awareness for, something that we hope you want to support as well if you're able to. For those interested, there is a QR code that will be on the screen from time to time, but you can also do !donate in the chat at any time to bring up that Tiltify link if you do want to show your support that way. And with that said, I believe we are going to start getting things moving towards our first draft. And while we get that set up, I think, Gab, we can't really drop people into this draft without a little preamble, without telling them what they're going to be seeing. Because for those who have played a lot of Cube at home, they've never played anything like this. The Cube that we are going to be watching is the ball pit. And I'm going to set up what the ball pit is here and then allow you to give me some of your thoughts and initial takes on it. But this is a cube by Jane McKinney. And the ball pit is a 480 card cube that is going to be drafted in 4 packs of 15. So at the end of the draft, every card in the cube will be drafted. And this cube is a desert cube. So there's no lands that you can add to your deck at the end of it. Everything that you draft, you have to play, and you have to be drafting your lands. So every card that you draft will end up in your 60 card deck. But there's a twist. Every card in this cube is also a modal double face card because at any time when you could legally cast a spell, you can cast one of your cards as a chromatic sphere. Every single card in the cube is what it is, plus a chromatic sphere. No deck building, 60 cards, entirely wild. How do you even begin to go about this?
Yeah. Chromatic sphere. Maybe we should remind people what that card does. It's a 1 mana artifact. You can pay 1 to sack it, draw a card, and filter the mana for any color you want. Um, Not to mistake was Chromatic Star, which draws you a card whenever it goes to the graveyard, which would be really powerful with some of these cards. So, yeah, every card can fix your mana. You still have to draft lands. There's a lot of lands. I believe 40% of the cards roughly are lands. And I would assume the lands are pretty high pick. A lot of them are utility lands, some of them are artifact lands. We obviously have some affinity cards, a lot of cards that care about artifact, but also some cards that, Jane was very clear about it. They just put whatever they felt like in their cube. The word vibes came back a few times, I think, in the description.
Yeah,
And
definitely a vibes based environment. And I do believe we have the draft ready. So we are going to go down to it as it is going to be a longer draft with 4 packs being drafted here. We will be watching Joshua Skripik doing our drafting here. So there is a chromatic sphere in front of each player just to remind them exactly what that card does because every card that they are drafting is whatever it is plus a chromatic sphere. And we are off to the races. We're going to do our best to try to keep up with the action here. Power conduit at the front there, but I think exactly as you were saying, it does feel like in a format where every card can be a chromatic sphere, and there isn't really as much of a punish for flooding out when you can cycle so many cards. But there is a punish for getting mana screwed. Lands may be a higher pick than we may otherwise expect.
yeah, for people familiar with limited formats, cycling lands are always pretty valuable, and every land is basically a cycling land, a better cycling land. So you can't really flood. I guess if you draft too many lands, you might end up with too much air in your deck, and maybe we'll see some decking. But it is going to be really skill intensive, especially since this cube is not very well curated. Jane themselves admitted they're not super interested in super tuning it, and it's a lot of cards they like. So it's going to be super rewarding for the players who can pinpoint and identify these really powerful cards that potentially are in the cube. There might just be some cards that, if you played that cube a bunch, you'd be like, no, that card is way too good. It should not be there. And, if the players can figure out which ones are which, that could be a huge advantage.
Yeah, I think one thing that we were seeing was a card like Slow Bad Goblin Tinkerer being pulled up to the front. Now, if all of these spheres were stars, this card would feel completely broken. But as it stands, it is a card that is essentially providing you protection at the cost of any given card in your deck. So you're never out of ammo for it. Any card can be an artifact, but you are weighing the downside of not having access to that card draw by sacrificing a sphere, for example.
Yeah. Thing how I would go about it is, either try to identify a good card, or if nothing stands out, maybe just pick lands somewhat highly, because 60 card, 40% are lands. You probably do want, about 40%, 20, 20, probably 25, 26 lands even. So maybe default to like a decent land if you see one. If you don't feel like any of the cards are super strong.
Yeah, and I believe, I'm not 100% certain, that was Legion Extruder as the first pick. This was a card that I was pretty excited about looking at the cube. Same idea where every card in your deck is essentially a target for this, but being able to turn any given card into a 3/3 golem for the cost of 3 mana is one of those tools where you essentially ensure that you always have access to gas, right? It's not okay, well, I'm spinning my wheels cycling trying to find gas. It's at any given point I have access to at least some kind of threat.
Yeah. No, and scanning through the list real quick, we see one of these really powerful creatures. It's Emissary of Despair. There's actually a lot of the creatures that are, you know, 1 or 2 toughness. We see Signal Pest. So, yeah, no, seems like a solid first pick.
Now, here's a card I was really excited about looking at the cube list: Argivian Restoration. Uh, 4 mana reanimation spells, not the most exciting in a lot of cases, but when all of your reanimation targets are easy to get into the graveyard by playing them as a sphere and cycling them, suddenly cards like Darksteel Forge or Metalwork Colossus really enter the conversation as an easy way of uh, cheating them into playing, getting ahead of that curve.
Yeah, for sure. There's a card like Darksteel Colossus. How do you think that works, though? Because if it would be put to the graveyard from anywhere, you have to shuffle it back in. But if you play it as a sphere,
I believe the replacement effect would see it still trying to go to the graveyard as a Colossus, and it will get shuffled in. So, at least a way of not decking yourself.
yeah.
So
But
that's cool.
yeah, there is definitely a few expensive artifacts. So yeah, I think that card is it's pretty powerful. It is overwhelming, but it is on time. So the players do. Not sure if you know at some point maybe if someone has like all the packs or something, you kind of ask them to speed up a bit. Not sure what the logistics are, but I think it's good that the players get to. It would be frustrating if you like feel like you were rushed and didn't have time to. You also have to read every card because a lot of them you maybe haven't played with, haven't seen it in a while, or maybe never
Absolutely.
heard of.
I think one thing that I do want to touch on, of course, Mirror Enforcer being at the front of this pack. There are 16 copies of Mirror Enforcer in this cube. So, on a surface level, people may be looking at it and saying, wow, this card is really excellent. But Mirror Enforcer, there's a lot of them, so it is excellent, but it's not as high of a pick as you may think. Pithing Needle is the card being pulled up to the front for Joshua here. I believe the ability from uh, Chromatic Sphere is a mana ability, so Pithing Needle uh, is going to be fighting kind of to go uh, against some of the tools in this cube, but maybe the uh, not the ability of Sphere itself. We don't want it to completely negate the point of the environment.
Yeah, I think one of the cards in Joshua's pack is also Dranyard Temple. There's you might have mentioned it already. There's 8 copies of it in the cube, and Dranyard Temple is a land you can bring back from the graveyards.
Yeah, I hadn't touched on that yet. It's 3 mana to return it from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So it's definitely one of those lands that has a lot of utility in the cube for using it as a sphere early and then being able to continue developing your mana as well. So Drown Your Temple, definitely one that I think in an ideal world, every player would pick up one of, but perhaps we're going to see somebody amass multiple copies, and that is the first of 16 Mirror Enforcers getting picked, I believe, for Joshua.
Yeah, which one would you value more off the top of your head, the Temple or the Enforcer?
I think my gut says that in general, whenever it's close like that, and I do think it's close, I would be leaning towards the land, not just because there's less of them in the cube, but also because of what we spoke about earlier with the value of lands in the environment. So it does feel like a close pick, and I'd probably give the coin flip over there, but I don't really think you can ever go wrong with picking a Mirror Enforcer in this environment.
Yeah. I guess once you maybe yeah once you start picking the first few ones, you could just try and just really be as all in as possible on Affinity. Of course, Affinity is going to be a big theme, but there's a lot of the cards are not artifacts. Some are colored. Some of the cards don't even care about artifact. There's really like a few random ones in there. There's a Lord of the Pit.
I
There's
mean,
a,
it's a ball pit. You have to have a Lord of the Pit in the ball pit,
right.
Gab.
You can see I'm not super familiar with.
I think that was a Shimmer Mirror being picked up for Joshua. Shimmer Mirror pretty cool because it does essentially break all of the timing rules in the game when you can cast all of your chromatic spheres at instant speed. You do get to morph your game plan a bit into this reactive flash game plan. And I will say the cube doesn't have that much in terms of instant speed interaction normally. The color white, for example, only has 2 instants total. So definitely a cube that we're going to be seeing a lot of plays. Not all of them. There are instants throughout, but a lot of the gameplay is going to be sorcery speed based, or as some people would call it, fair magic. Being able to break the rules like that with something like a Shimmer Mirror, I can see how the value of that goes up quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that maybe Joshua is not valuing lands highly enough. Maybe thinking, oh, I'll just always get lands later, and I could see myself having the opposite problem, or of maybe valuing lands a little too highly, and ending up with too many of them. So it'd be interesting to see if he runs into trouble down the line, or if maybe the other players at the pod are drafting fairly similarly, taking the spells first and figuring they can get some of the lands later. Because we see there's another one of these temples, which I feel like would be one of the better cards. It's like a free Ram spell. And we see him take a Darksteel Citadel there. I like the pick. You have all these potential chromatic spheres to filter your colorless mana as well. So especially with an enforcer early.
Yeah, I think there were 2 Darksteel Citadels as well as a Tree of Tales in that pack, and another copy of Drown Your Temple, as you mentioned. I do like picking the Artifact land, especially because he has already picked up a copy of Mirror Enforcer. I think there was a discussion to be had between the value of Tree of Tales inherently giving you green mana versus the Darksteel Citadel's indestructibility. I believe that's Panoptic Mirror being looked at here, if I'm not mistaken. So some consideration going towards that one, if I am thinking of the right card.
Yeah. There's also Recommission, kind of a mini reanimate spell in this cube. I believe Recommission also brings back creatures,
Glaring
right?
Spotlight, excuse me.
Ooh.
Very different card.
Yeah. Yeah, I would maybe be tempted with Recommission.
I also like the idea of something like a Crumbling Vestige. Again, lands are good. Land comes into play, tap, but creating
Yeah.
mana is maybe a risk, except when everything is a chromatic sphere, it's not. So I do like that pickup. I think this is exactly that recognition that Joshua may have gotten to the same conclusion that you were at a few picks ago, which is he needs to be picking lands more aggressively than he is. There's no sideboarding, there's no deck building, there's 60 cards that you're drafting and 60 cards that you're playing. So you really don't want to find yourself in a position where you are getting hands that have no lands. Even one landers can work, but you really want your average hand in this cube to have at the very least 2 lands, and then you can really start in getting things off the ground with those spheres.
Yeah, we see one of the bigger creatures in the cube, Sir Gwyn. It's actually funny. We played a bit at the last PT, some meet and beat, and one of the decks I had like two commander decks to play with people who want to play against me, and it was pre-constructed commander decks, and one of them was the Sir Gwyn. That was my commander, so
The
I'd
circle
never,
of life.
yeah, just completely random, and um, seemed like somewhat random in that cube too. I'm assuming there's a few equipments, artifacts. Equipments are usually artifacts, but we
Yeah,
see a
probably
bottom.
cube knights as well.
Yeah, we see a bottomless pit. That was like one that struck me as more random cards in the cube, and maybe not the most fun, or maybe there's like a way to abuse it. I guess maybe
I'm
it
more
can be a way.
curious how many cards with the word pit didn't make this cube.
Oh,
Kamal
right, I
Pit
keep
Fighter is
forgetting.
here. Bottomless Pit is here. Lord of the Pit is here. I do feel like we are embracing the fact that we are in the pit here.
This is my I don't have the right mindset. I guess good thing you're here
this
because
is this
I
is your blind spot. This is
yeah.
your pitfall, you could say.
Kamal Pit Fighter. That's a classic, a Pro Tour winning card from way back.
All right, two Mirror Enforcers, and I believe this is Joshua's initial pack coming back, because I do remember that slow bad being here. But two Mirror Enforcers wheeling here. Wouldn't be surprised if he was to pick one up here on the wheel. Has picked quite a few lands up to this point, so it might feel safe now investing in a second copy of Enforcer, but certainly could go back to something like this Power Conduit that he was eyeing originally when the pack was here.
Yeah, I believe Power Conduit, one of these cards that is in multiple, like 8 copies of that card in the.
No, only one of these.
Okay.
Yeah, Power Conduit, 2 mana artifact, remove a counter from permanent you control, choose one, put a charge counter on target artifact, or +1/+1 counter on target creature. So definitely some things to do with it, but one of those cards that you do want to build around a bit more when possible. Sponsire of Ulamog. One of those cards that when you're looking at it here, it really is sort of, what do I do with this? Because the 10 mana cost, not the most overwhelming in and of itself, considering it is essentially a chromatic sphere.
Yeah.
But can you make it work given that?
I would be tempted to pick some of these expensive cards, not exactly knowing what the pace of the games is going to be, and assuming you're gonna get to the mid late game, and all this cycling, as you mentioned. It's the downside of these expensive cards is that it's it can be unplayable some of the games, but if you can always cycle it, it is 10 mana. For some reason I thought we were talking about a 7 mana card. I guess it's 7-11.
Renegade Rallier, one of the cards being considered here, as well as Paradox Haste now pulled up to the front. There's also a copy of Ogre's Cleaver. That's one of those equipment that we were talking about. So perhaps if somebody is looking at making use of that Sir Gwyn that was going around, that is a card that can go in that deck. And again, a reminder to those that may be joining us late, every card that the players draft, they are playing. So there is no tough deck building decisions. There's only tough drafting choices, because once you've picked a card, you're committed to it. And there are cards that may just be chromatic spheres for the entirety of the draft. They never get played as their quote unquote real version, and their entire text is this is a chromatic sphere, and that's fine. But the more options you have and the more you can play more of your cards as real cards, the more powerful of an edge you'll have ultimately throughout the course of this draft, I would say.
Yeah, a little surprised to see a couple of these cards still late. Obviously, most of the cards are going to be decent, but I feel like Rending Vines would have been a slightly higher pick. Rending Vines is green 1 instant. Destroy target artifact or enchantment if its converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of cards in your hand, and you draw a card. So it could be like instant speed Stone Rain, draw cards. That sounds like a pretty powerful effect. Another card that was still late in the pack that seems strong to me is Renegade Rallier, since you're basically guaranteed to be able to trigger Revolt, and just nice curve play. It brings back lands, so you could see, you're almost guaranteed to have a permanent that costs 2 or less in your graveyard by turn 3. I mean, maybe it's my value, my control-ish card advantage mindset that's kicking in, but I would have thought these cards would have been maybe higher picks there.
So we're already seeing a bit of a combo mentality for Joshua. Did get a very late Fathom Mage in that pack. Fathom Mage, 4 mana 1/1 with Evolve. Whenever a +1/+1 counter is placed on Fathom Mage, you may draw a card. That's a nice little combo with the Power Conduit that we saw Joshua pick a few picks ago. So now has a bit of an engine to start turning potential extra mana and resources into more cards. And when you're playing a 60 card deck in what is essentially a limited environment, having these sorts of cute combos is problematic in that you're less likely to assemble any given two, but the more that you can draft, the more likely you are to assemble something. And any sort of cohesion is probably going to give you a bit of an edge in this type of format.
Yeah, it could definitely be some kind of high variance scenario where you go a little more all in, whereas I would be picking cards like Rending Vines, Rallier, drawing out Temple, and just kind of solid overall card advantage, good value cards, and maybe there's just enough synergies that you can just run people over if you kind of move in on the synergies and just take a lot of the more powerful cards, all the affinity cards. So I wonder if there's some kind of cube instinct that kicks in if you've cubed enough was weird cubes, um, and how much time do you think people like study the list? Because I believe they have access to the list beforehand, maybe before they pick the cube. Um, you've never played in one of these cube cons, right?
I've never had the pleasure of going to KubeCon, so I don't exactly know how much prep time the players get with the cube list. Of course, when you are signing up for the cubes and expressing interest in them, I believe that the list, as well as a description of the cube, is available online to look at. Go through the Cube Turbo link and really get a feel for what you're going to be playing. But even so, I think there's a very big difference between looking at this list like we are doing at home and having a physical pack of cards in front of you and trying
Yeah,
to parse this in a practical setting.
we saw Josh pick up an early Blood Moon.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. In a format with a lot of spheres, it maybe it costs to uh, having a card like that is limiting your opponent's mana somewhat, but you're never really locking anyone out of anything other than the utility of their lands, and maybe there's enough value in that. And we are actually getting a on the ground report from somebody who may have been at Twitch, KubeCon in the past in the Twitch chat, telling us that players submit their preferences and they're assigned a cube. They find out which one 10 minutes before they start drafting, so not much time to study. So if you've signed up for something like the ball pit and you find out 10 minutes before that you're going, uh, maybe things get a little dicey with something like the ball pit here.
Yeah, Blood Moon's interesting. It could let you, not pick up the utility lands. You're like, okay, I'm just gonna play Blood Moon. I'm gonna not focus my picks on utility lands, and I'm gonna just try and neutralize my opponent's utility lands with my Blood Moon.
Haunting Wind, I believe, the card Joshua has pulled up to the front here. Whenever artifacts are tapped or activated, Haunting Wind deals 1 damage to that artifact's controller.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would want like kind of symmetric effects like that are gonna invest a card where I get punished and my opponent gets punished. But we did see he was drafting a somewhat aggressive deck.
Yeah, Joshua wants to be the villain here, I guess, because the Haunting Winds is picked and we are off to the races. I will say that the Sir Gwyn did end up in Joshua's deck. I normally we would say pool, but pool and the deck are the same thing when it comes to this cube. So Joshua has a Sir Gwyn now, and maybe 95% of the time Sir Gwyn is going to be a Chromatic Sphere. But if one of the more exciting equipment in the cube gets picked up, maybe that changes. So something to think of if there's something like a Helm of Cauldra going around. Uh, Maybe there's some cool stuff happening there. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we saw him pick one of the white splicers maybe. It's kind of hard to. I think it was Sensor Splicer, a white and 4 1/1, so 5 mana for a 1/1, and you get a golem, a free golem when it enters, and all your golem gains vigilance. Thought he might pick the Mare Enforcer there, but low value creature picked up for Josh.
Sorcerer Spyglass, if Josh is looking to monopolize the pithing needle effect market, may want to get even more devious with that. I believe that's a Cogwork Librarian, if I'm not mistaken. Not one I was expecting to see, but if that is the case, certainly an exciting one.
Yeah, I'm kind of in awe every time you manage to recognize one of these cards.
I mean, half the time I'm wrong, so the key is to just say it somewhat confidently and then just accept that you're going to be wrong. But Cogworth Librarian, a fun one. You draft it face up, and at any time you can essentially cash it in by putting it back into a pack to take 2 cards out of that pack. So you're very much giving up a pick as an investment to then get 2 picks later. My biggest issue with Cogworth Librarian in an environment like this is I'm already overwhelmed trying to pick 1 card out of a pack. I have no idea how I would begin to pick 2 cards out of a pack. It's melting my brain just trying to think about it.
Ooh, we see Talgilad Chosen 2/1 for 2 pro artifact. That's one I had in my sideboard in the Tooth and Nail deck when I came in second at the Meriden Block Constructed PT. I was looking at the list and I saw the Chosen, I saw the Justice, I believe, the 2 mana, a green and 1 instant destroy target artifacts, try 2. That was a card I had in my sideboard. Also had a lot of artifact hate in my main deck. I think I had Viridian Shaman in the main. A lot of these cards made it into Jane's Cube.
Door of Destiny is a card that's showing up here. I believe one of my near and dear, I guess, cards. Morning Tide was my first pre-release, and Door of Destinies was the pre-release promo. So I remember just being in awe of this shiny card that they handed me just for showing up for an event. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then they told me I can't play it in my deck, and I was like, wow, this sucks. And I'm glad since then we've been able to come to a point where pre-release promos can be played in the deck. And we've heard that we're a bit quiet, so our producer will take a look into that just to try to get us up a bit louder for the stream. Thank you for the comments on that. We are working on it. But as we keep taking a look at these packs, I think one thing we should touch on, because we haven't touched on it yet, is Zalfrin Void. There's a lot of multiples in this cube, but none more than Zalfrin Void. I think there's 30-ish copies of the card in the cube. And it makes a lot of sense. It's a land that adds colorless, which is what you need for your chromatic spheres, but it also gives you that scry, so it allows you to potentially keep a one land hand. Maybe it makes up for some of the issues that you may face from having a lower land deck than you would like in this environment. So a
Yeah.
lot of those going around, and we'll see probably a lot of early Zalfir Voids in the games.
Yeah, I feel like we actually haven't seen that many so far. Maybe I've just been missing them, but
No, we definitely haven't. They've been there here and there, but they've definitely been missing. So I think potentially the back two packs of the cube are going to be very void heavy. We're going to see packs with 4, 5, 6 of them potentially. We'll see. There are 36 of them in the cube.
yeah. Another interesting thing is how much colored mana do you need? Because sure, every card can be a chromatic sphere, but you're still down a mana every time you have to cycle to cast a spell. So I'm not sure if Josh had Shivan Reef at the front of his pack as well as Soulstone Sanctuary, the standard all-star creature land.
I think Sanctuary was the pick there. So
Yeah.
a nod towards the prioritization of lands that we've been touching on, while also saying that this land does things. And that is the flip side of concern in this cube. Again, flooding is significantly better than getting mana screwed in this format, but you do ultimately need to be able to do things. Otherwise, the player that is mana screwed will catch up and even out the game.
Yeah. These cubes got to be just so absurdly skill intensive because I could see, the learning curve is probably somewhat steep, but I'm assuming just having one cube under your belt is just such night and day. I could see like, okay, you drafted for the first time, you end up with a deck where you felt like you made a lot of mistakes and you realize a lot of things right away, like the color thing or how many lands you should draft or how valuable some of the cards are. But the first time you're just drafting it for like, which I'm assuming is the case for all these AF players, got to be a lot to think of, and yeah, my brain would be racing.
All right, here's Thirst for Knowledge and Devil's Play, two different sides of the same coin addressing what is essentially the flood issue, if you want to call it that. But there's also a Drownir Temple, and we've seen Joshua passing on them up to this point. I think this is the pack where I would be happily taking a temple if given the choice, but Devil's Play is going to be the choice for Joshua, wanting to have access to the inevitability that Devil's Play can provide. And here's one of those multi-void packs, 2 Zalfir Voids, and I believe 5 lands here. So really your choice is, which flavor of land do you want? Do you want the early utility of the Scry or the late game potential that something like a Mouth of Rahnam or Moorland Haunt provides you?
Yeah, I know that there's not a ton of snow mana in the cube. There's a few snow lands. There are 4 or 5 copies of Mouth of Rahnam, and you need another one to activate the first one. And the temple thing, like you saw it right away. I'm honestly not sure if or how fast I would have realized that drawing out temple is really interesting because you can play it as a chromatic sphere, get it in the yard, and then bring it back on turn 3. What are the odds, Josh or some of the players have maybe not even realized that,
Yeah, it's one of those things where when there's so much information being thrown at you with this cube in such a short time frame, and for us, our job is to just sit here and look at the cards at home. So I'm just thinking about the applications while constantly having this list in front of me. But for Josh and for the players down there, they are just looking at a pack of 15 cards and trying to make a choice. So uh, it is really rough trying to also catch on all of these different synergies. And Just to remind players at home who may be joining us late, 4 packs of 15 are what we're dealing with here. Every card in the cube is being drafted, all 480 of them, and every card that the players draft will be played. So players will be playing 60 card decks, no lands being able to be added to the deck. You play what you draft what you play. So that's why we do see the prioritization of lands going up higher than you may be used to otherwise. And we are seeing the cards that I sort of had in my mind as these are going to be less popular, the Sir Gwens and the Slippery Bogles going around last pick. So our luck that Joshua is the vacuum that is getting these cards, but maybe less ideal for him.
Yeah, we see Josh reviewing his decks. His very first pick of the draft, Legion Extruder, right? A red and one shock, and then you can sack your artifacts. That was a pretty strong card in his first pack. We see Emissary of Despair. We see a few Mirror Enforcers, some artifact lands.
Very kind of Josh to fan through it there. I believe 10 lands is his count after 2 packs. So we were expecting the players may want to be somewhere around 20 to 24 lands by the end of the draft. So at the halfway mark being at 10, I would say that's a healthy number. You don't really need to ramp up the prioritization much, but you do want to try to keep a steady pace.
Yeah, about 40% of the cards are lands. So, I'm assuming Jane decided that's kind of what each player wanted, about 24 lands, 36 spells is probably a good number to get to.
Yeah, and I think going back to Legion Extruder, I think that's the type of card that really does shine in this cube, not just because you have infinite fodder for it with everything being a chromatic sphere, but also the fact that the activation on it is colorless, I think goes a long way, considering colored mana feels like it is at more of a premium than you may otherwise expect. Yes, it's everywhere, but it does still require a active commitment of a resource, even if that resource is being replaced to make it. So it isn't strictly free.
Yeah, especially like your first spell or two, you're going to be able to cast fairly easily, but then you have to reinvest every time the sphere. So there's definitely a balance to keep there. Taking the really powerful cards, we see a Manic Vandal. That would strike me as one of the better cards, a red and 2 for a 2/2 that destroys an artifact when it enters. I'm not sure what the blue card to the front is.
That's a Wing Splicer. So that's another one of these splicers from Scars of Mirrodin block, where essentially artificers that come in and create a golem, so good with any reanimation or bounce synergies. And one of the things that maybe the consideration for Joshua here is already has access to the Sensor Splicer that we saw picked in a previous pack, but also Legion Extruder makes golems. So when Wing Splicer comes down, not only are you making a golem, but golem creatures you control have flying, that last line of text. So suddenly we are seeing a bit of this golem subtype coming together for Joshua, and maybe that is why he prioritizes picking the Wing Splicer in this spot, even though potentially could have gone for something like a Strip Mine, saying that in a format like this, I want this cohesive game plan.
Yeah, Strip Mine sounds pretty appealing when you can cycle it. You get to decide on your own terms when you want it to be a Strip Mine if you have a lot of lands, and maybe punish someone, and especially maybe after game one. Assuming the matches are best of 3, so maybe you notice that your opponent got all greedy and has a lot of different different colors in his deck, different colored cards, or maybe you notice he was a little lighter on the land side, but decides to take the golem to go with some of his other golem making creatures. The extruder thing I had not noticed. That's pretty heads up too. That could come as vigilance, but the flyer sounds much better. It is funny, right? The white one is more expensive and has a worse ability, right?
Well, the white one, so Sensor Splicer was the common. Wing Splicer, I believe, was uncommon in the
Oh,
format.
right.
It was a bit of a limited bomb in the format, just a 3/3 flying with a secondary body and giving potential more flying. Wing Splicer was very good. Master Splicer, the other uncommon white one, was an anthem for your golems. So that one I don't know if we've already seen it, but if we haven't, definitely one that Joshua will be on the lookout for.
Yeah, we see a hangerback walker. We see a modeler creature.
Yeah,
A
we do
red.
see a metallic mastery there, so a threaten effect for artifacts. But uh, I'm not really sure if we've seen the sacrifice outlets that you may want to make that work. So Joshua does take the metallic mastery, and the question is, what is the expectation for sort of abusing that, or if there is a plan for abusing it versus just playing a fair game plan of just playing a threaten effect and one big hit with one big card should be good enough.
Yeah, maybe dreaming of stealing a Blight Sealed Colossus.
Many players have dreamed, very few have done. Okay, I believe that card up at the front is Veil of Assimilation. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance whenever an artifact enters the battlefield. So one of those cards that really makes use of your spheres as you have access to them. It does feel like any card that is giving you repeated triggers for artifacts is probably of a higher value in an environment like this. But is that better than a bounce land? Bounce lands in a land limited environment, a few different levels of value, right? Not only is it essentially giving you 2 mana in one card, but in the late game, being able to cycle a card and still develop your mana is very exciting.
Yeah, plus it's the no turfs on the Gruul turf. It's actually, I think it's the only bounce land in the cube. There's like a few dual lands in each color, and yeah, no, bounce lands are just great value. I like that pick a lot. Josh, I think needs more lands, and that one's a great pickup for sure. Especially because you like play a land, you bounce it, and then if you're a little flooded, you can cycle it away since it's a sphere.
So, and I do want to give a shout out to the Impossible Dream, the Urzatron Dream. There's a copy of Urza's Tower in this pack. There's one of each Urza's land. One tower, one power plant, one mine in the cube. Every card of the cube is being drafted, but the dream, of course, is the same player gets all three. That's step one of the dream. But the second step is in your 60 card singleton deck, you have to have drawn all three pieces in a timely manner. If you're able to get Tron online, it is going to be absolutely insane, but it does feel like an impossible dream. Now, what isn't impossible is the splicers. We were talking about the common and uncommon splicers, but here's probably the one that most players are familiar with.
The OG one, right?
The OG, the rare, the one that's seen the most constructed play of all of them. And you know, Blade Splicer typically is a card that you have seen in cubes outside of just the Mirrodin block. Blade Splicer is a card that's seen play in a lot of cubes because having two bodies, having this blinkable body that makes repeated golems was strong, and the golem having first strike was a lot of pressure. Now, if you're giving first strike to a lot of golems, then the value of that really starts getting out of hand. So I think there is definitely some investment from Josh here to have a cohesive deck, and in that vein, he is higher prioritizing these splicers to make sure that he's getting access to all of them.
Yeah, I like it. And everyone knows that first strike is by far the best ability a creature can have.
You know what? It's hard to disagree. Double strike is right there, but it is still hard to disagree.
Double strike is unreal.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's Sphinx.
No one's ever seen double strike in the wild.
Rashad
Magister
Port.
Sphinx.
Rashad Port. We saw him value cards like Blood Moon. He didn't pick Strip Mine, but yeah, could have had Strip Mine, Rashad Port. Another really powerful land that kind of lets you, you get to use it when you have nothing else to do or when you feel like it's impactful, and the rest of the time you tap it for your own money. It was one of the most dominant card in standard at the time. It was banned too, right? Either in standard or in block, but yeah.
Yeah, I am eyeing that Remember the Fallen there a bit, but it is Shimmer and Grotto that is going to end up being the pick, I believe. So just another land trying to get some additional fixing. You do want to find yourself in a position, excuse me, where these splicers are able to get cast in a reasonable manner.
Yeah, reminder that every card is a double face card, whatever it is, plus Chromatic Sphere, and that you draft 60 cards. You have to play every card you draft, so you have to draft your lands. There's about 40% lands in the cube, so you probably want to end up with around 24 lands in your pile, and Josh being mindful of that, making sure to pick lands once in a while and not fall too far behind.
I think Throne of the God Pharaoh was that last pick. Just continuing the theme of having cards that can provide pressure in late game situations, but you're also very happy just throwing them away as spheres.
Yeah, Friend sounds really nice, really powerful effect. Especially since you can cycle. We saw a 10-man Eldrazi. We know there's cards like Lord of the Pits in the cube. A few other big ones. There's a Brute Star.
I don't know what this Time Wizard is. I'm trying to figure out what card that was. Of course, it was altered to be the Time Wizard, but Clock of Omens we are hearing from chat. So Clock of Omens, the Time Wizard for this cube. Tap to untapped artifacts you control, untap target artifacts. So this is one of the themes that we were talking about potentially in the cube, which is untapping being relevant with so many artifacts having powerful abilities. And I think that is true for this deck as well, just being able to use the golem tokens to untap a Legion Extruder and make multiple golems on an end step. Some nasty things you can do with this.
Yeah, I saw a card I would have valued pretty highly, an Ingenious Smith, a white and 1/1/1. You look at the top 4, you pick an artifact and then it grows. That card would strike me as premium, honestly.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I was eyeing that card as a very likely first pick out of this pack from Joshua, but he opted to go in a different direction. To see it wheel kind of shocks me. It does feel like the type of card that anyone can play and most people should. So it is fascinating seeing the drafting strategy that these players are coming into here when a card like Ingenious Smith that does feel like one of those all-stars in anybody's deck is just going around the table.
Yeah. Drafting strategy or lack thereof, might I say. Nah, it'll be interesting because I feel like surely someone's going to be scooping up. We saw a late Rallier, a late Ingenious Smith. So I wonder if maybe,
by definition, someone will have it.
Yeah.
By definition, it will be in their deck. So
just curious if we're going to be proving wrong. It is if the person ending up winning the pod is going to have like a bunch of the temples. We were like.
Yeah, is it going to be the Drownyard Temple player, or is it going to be, somebody that it has, for example, just Golem Kindred going on here and just focusing on these creature-driven strategies instead? Morbid Curiosity there. 3 mana, sacrifice an artifact or creature as an additional cost to casting. Draw cards equal to the converted mana cost of the sacrifice permanent.
Yeah, we see Josh hesitating. I think a good heuristic is when in doubt, just take the land. you feel like none of these cards are super great. Take the more lands you take now, the more you can afford to use your picks on spells. If somehow pack 4 is more spell heavy, and the
Right, you're
clear.
essentially investing in a pick here in order to not have to make a harder choice down the line and being able to just, the heuristic for me is if you're picking, let's say, a 4 out of 10 card over a land, then later on you're low on lands and you have to pick a land over a 7 out of 10 card for your deck. That's going to be a regrettable choice. So anytime you have the ability to pick a lower a pick a land over a lower powered pack, you get paid off for it most likely later on in the draft.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of drafting, the lands deck or an Omnath 4 or 5 color deck in the Vintage Cube on Magic Online, where my heuristic is if the card's not a premium spell, I'm just usually going to take a land, especially if it's one of the decent ones. So I don't think you need to push it to that extreme in this cube, because you do have a lot of lands in the pack, but I would still be considering lands pretty highly. All right, quick review.
Yeah, as you get a look at what Josh has drafted so far, I will remind players this is the ball pit. It is a 480 card desert cube, which means that you have to draft all of your cards. You cannot add any lands to your deck. Players will be drafting 4 packs of 15, and every card in the cube is a modal double face card, including the lands, as chromatic spheres. So any card can be played as a chromatic sphere or as itself. You do have to draft all of your lands, and every card you draft, you have to play. So at the end of this draft, every card in the cube will get drafted, and every player will have a 60 card deck that they have drafted.
Yeah, I do like one of the Josh Late's pickup. We'll see if he manages to put it to good use, but it was Merciless Eviction, the 6-mana white-black sweeper. It's a 6-mana sorcery, and you get to choose one, exile all artifacts, or exile all creatures, exile all enchantments, or planeswalkers. So you get to pick one of the 4, but yeah, exile all artifacts or exile all creature. You could see like Josh building his game around that card and getting to potentially like wreck his opponent. And we see the Lord of the Pits here, as well as one of the chromatic cards.
We also see a little shout out to the pit archetype. Spawning Pit is in this pack, so quite another pit in the pit expanded universe that we have going on here. Josh, of course, taking the time to read Genju of the Realm, I believe, is this one. So 5 colors of mana and a lot of exciting things going on there.
Atog, Sliver Queen. Not a ton of removal in the cube. I was going through the list. There is some. We saw Banishing Light. There's a couple sweepers, Extinction Event, but
yeah,
I didn't quite catch though what he ended up first picking there.
Definitely not the most amount of interaction as you would expect in the cube. So perhaps we are going to see some ships in the night gameplay here.
Speaking of balmish rares, Menark, that was an absolute bomb in limited.
Yeah,
one of the best cards you could open in that set.
Speaking of best cards in their set, Steel Hellkite, if I'm looking at the card right, was an absolute beast of a powerhouse in that Scars of Mirrodin block as well. And Goblin Charbelcher. Now, if somebody has managed to make a deck work that is low on lands, this Charbelcher would be awesome.
How do you even go about it, though? Is there any synergies potentially? I guess it's just repeatable removal potentially.
Yeah, it's it's one of those cards.
Because I'm not even sure there's a mountain in the There is one basic mountain.
One basic mountain, one basic forest, one basic island, one snow-covered plains, I believe,
Yeah.
and I think a basic swamp. Yep.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like we're just getting trolled by Jane, was the creator of the cube.
Oh, we absolutely are, but we're not getting trolled nearly as hard as the players are. So, this is what they signed up for. They chose this life. They wanted to play the ball pit. And you know what? I don't blame them. It's overwhelming, but it looks like an absolute blast.
Yeah, no, curious to see how the games play out, how coherent and because as much as they say they haven't curated the cube too much, surely they played at least a bit with it, and some cards have been removed, added, etc. But
Someone's asking how many mirror enforcers. The answer is 16. 16 mirror enforcers in this cube.
yeah, we saw Josh pick one fairly early, but then not necessarily value them as highly later in the game. Because technically, let's say you go Artifact Land Sphere, and then lucky enough, if you have a second Artifact Land Double Sphere, that's 5 hours. So you can start casting them realistically on turn 3.
Yeah. In the ideal situation where you have all of the resources necessary, you could have 2 mirror enforcers down on turn 3. It does ask a few different things of you, but it's definitely possible.
We shall just pass one of my favorite cards of all time, Manny. I don't know if you
Lay it on me.
the Magpie.
Oh, the thieving magpie, the flying ophidian of our dreams. I am a big magpie fan.
Yeah, I played that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I played that card in Constructed. Back when it was acceptable to play a card like that in Constructed.
The good old days.
Yeah, we see the Justice and Shaman. Speaking of cards I've played, I mentioned it a little earlier in Tooth and Nail. Both these cards were, I believe, I had Shaman main deck and maybe Justice just in the sideboard, but it was that kind of wild Pro Tour where Affinity was probably the best deck or almost one of the only decks. Mirrodin block Constructed, and yeah.
I like this.
Yeah.
Joshua was considering Glorious Anthem. All right, so we did have to do a bit of a jump there. Excuse us. There was a minor cut as we did have to get an issue fixed, but we are back into it, and we will get confirmation later, hopefully, by having a look at Joshua's list, what the pick ended up being there. That was a Glorious Anthem that he had.
Looks like he was considering the Shaman. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he took. There was a
there was an Ancient Craving as the other option, just a way to draw more cards. But I would be surprised if he didn't go for the Viridian Shaman there. It was very tempting.
See, another card I would value quite highly, the Slice and Twain, 4 mana, instant speed, cantrip, disenchant.
Yeah, I think I definitely would like to have as many of the disenchant effects as possible in my pool. Having the cycling one just feels good to me.
Yeah, it is a double green card, and we've already talked about that a bit. You do need to be careful. You don't have a ton of colored mana. The land steps were colorless. And sure, every one of your cards is a double face sphere card, but there's only so many colored cards you can afford to use spheres for, or I mean, maybe not, but then every time you do, you're basically like paying extra mana on every one of your spells, and at some point, you might just get run over if someone drafted a more streamlined deck with less colored spells, or maybe folk managed to focus on like just 1 or 2 colors while picking dual lands in these colors.
Sarpadian Empires Volume 3, shout out to that. Volume 7, excuse me, for any Magic Online player that's ever had to just name a card and they didn't care what it was. It was always right at the top of the list. So it was one of the easy to click ones if you've ever played a deck like Ad Nauseam. I've definitely named my fair share of Sarpadian Empires Volume 7.
Looks like no one's pulling the trigger on the chromatic cards. We see both the Genji of the Realm and the Sliver Queen tabling.
Yeah,
that ambitious.
Wouldn't be surprised if Joshua just picks one here just to have access to the top end they could provide here, but
yeah, I feel like I would be.
Our feed is frozen, so we'll get that fixed soon.
I feel like I would be like pretty frustrated in some ways drafting a cube like that, just realizing all the mistakes I've made and all the things I didn't realize right away. Like one cool thing you could do is draft almost only colorless cards, and the more colorless cards you draft, the more you can afford to play like a Sliver Queen in your deck, because you're playing a bunch of spheres and only using them on like one or two spells.
Welcome back to us. Sorry for that small technical glitch, but we'll get that fixed. Of course, I'm Monty Devuti. I've had the pleasure of being joined for this whole draft so far with Gab Nassif, which has been a wild one, and I know exactly what you mean. The philosophy of the cube creator was this is a cube of vibes. This is a cube of going with the flow, but for players like us who tend to be a little too overthinky with it, I think having access to the wide pool of cards and then being able to reflect on all of the choices I made, there would be quite a lot of dread there about exactly all the mistakes I made. We did stop midway. We didn't get to finish the draft, so we are a few picks behind. Jumped back to where we were, so we'll get caught up to that pick and finish things out here as we go forward.
Yeah, because
this is good.
Most draft formats
we were on,
and even I would guess most cubes. You're like, okay, I'm gonna draft 2 colors, maybe 3 colors, focus on these colors, maybe pick up a dual land when I can. But this is like just completely different. We mentioned that the players probably had like 10 minutes to go over the list before the draft. Maybe some players, don't even care that much and just kind of, YOLO it and don't really. 60-card deck. We see the Charvelcher.
And sort of talk about the synergies that we potentially see and the lack of synergies on looking at Phyrexian Dreadnought. I'll remind players at home again that this is the ball pit. Every card in this cube is able to be played as a chromatic sphere, and the players had to draft their entire pools. That's why you see a lot of lands here. There's no basics able to be added. So this is the deck that Josh, who was our featured drafter, will be playing. So let's talk about it. Obviously, the most obvious synergies that we were talking about during the draft were the golems. There's Wing Splicer, Sensor Splicer, Blade Splicer, and Legion Extruder, just to name a few of the different ways that the deck has to create golems. Mirror Enforcer, notably, not a golem, is a mirror. But yeah, definitely, I do believe that all the players sitting at the table were clear on what the parameters of the draft were going to be. And, looking at Josh's deck, I can't say it's what I expected because I had no idea what to expect, but I can't say it's bad either. There's a lot of powerful cards. There was at least the acknowledgement of I need to draft lands and I need to be well prepared for that. And there's powerful cards there.
Yeah, there's powerful cards. You mentioned, one of his better ones, the Extruder, the Golem, Synergy. I am a little worried that I was trying to count, it was not easy to tell, but I only counted 16 lands.
Ooh.
Yeah,
No,
so
I think he had 15 going into the fourth pack, so that would be rough if he did end up at 16. But we'll have a better idea of that on the other side of this break, as we do have round one coming. And I will remind you, we are raising awareness for the American suicide prevention. I will American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I'll get that right. If you do want to support that cause, exclamation mark donate in the chat. There will also be a QR code on the screen at various times. So thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for supporting this awesome cause as we kick off CubeCon on the other side of this break. I'm going to go refill coffee and I will be back.
Okay, I'll be right back too.
"100 Ways to Draft" is a peasant build-around cube with a twist on the drafting portion. During the draft, you will start with 3 packs of 15 cards, as well as a Clockwork Librarian. This card allows you to pick 2 cards from a pack. When you do, you have to put the Librarian into this booster. This introduces a new dimension to the draft, and you're able to pick up Librarians from future boosters, ensuring later picks are rarely dead for players. To prepare you for the cube, here are a few tips before your first draft. This cube heavily focuses on build-around strategies. While drafting, use your Clockwork Librarian to ensure you can pick up strong card combos from a single pack. You can also pick up multiple Librarians and use more than one on a single pack later. There are no classic color pair archetypes to draft. This approach has eliminated on-rails drafting, and you have to evaluate your picks during every stage of the draft. Lastly, in comparison with other peasant cubes, 100 Ways to Draft has a lot less removal and interaction. Playing and drafting removal comes with a high cost, as it will slow down your own strategy. Here are some possible strategies. Counterbalance, Persist combo, Teshar, Sword combo, Builder's Talent, Arcbound Aggro, Cast Not From Hand, Discard, Self-mill, Leave the Graveyard, Big Spells Matter. Check out the full list here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you during this year's CubeCon.
Book sale, book sale, book sale, and a Brooding Saga here at CubeCon 2025. What can you find in a Brooding Saga? Fetch lands? No way. Power 9? I don't think so. Alright, what about traps? Any card with a subtype trap? Nope, not in this cube. How about bad fixing? This cube got bad fixing? Nah, this cube is sick fixing. Creatures? Yeah, it's got some good ones. Look at this guy. Kills your opponent's board. Alright, sagas? Yep, you got a lot of those. There's this one, and 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 this one. Alright, who's this cube for, though? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. People like to do a lot of reading. Bring the reading glasses. Gonna need them. Thinking caps, yeah, bring those. Gonna need that, definitely. Alright, non-singleton nature, yeah, of course. Gotta get that gameplay consistency. Loops, yeah, you got those too. You got this one, and this one, and this one, and oh yeah, that's just infinite turns. This one's the best, though. You got this card, and this card, and this card, and oh, that's That's just a beatdown curve. Never mind, never mind. Well, you can still play 95 out of the 360 cards cube. Those are sagas. Yep, got those. And these two, those are bangers. 5-color, put them in your deck. Get all the sagas, do the thing. Come play with the best card type in a Brooding Saga. Trauma Medicine for encountering Fable of the Moonbreaker on turn 3, sold separately. Not intended for children under the age of 13. Please use responsibly.
Judge, what the f*** am I looking at?
The ball pit, like its name implies, is an environment of unknown depths, filled with strange and wondrous objects in which one would normally not allow their vulnerable adult body to become immersed, were it not for the colorful allure of the spheres and the deep animalian urge to crawl into weird holes in the ground. The ball pit is built around 3 central rules. You can cast any card face down as a copy of Chromatic Sphere. You must draft all of your lands. This is a desert cube. You will draft a total of 60 cards, which form your final deck. No cuts, no sideboards. Because remember, you can always cycle a card by playing it face down as a copy of Chromatic Sphere. Gameplay-wise, the ball pit is a cube where most of your colored mana comes from cracking spheres, where most of your removal is aimed at resonant power outliers, and where most of your victories come from catching your opponent off guard with hard-fought value. Design-wise, the ball pit is a beautiful chimera between every Timmy's magical Christmas land of gorgeous curiosities and every Spike's violent desire to ruthlessly squeeze the last drops of joy out of someone else's beloved childhood playthings. Timmy's get to steamroll their opponents with armies of souped-up golems and obscure gleaming contraptions, and Spikes get to answer the question, what if Pithing Needle had Cycling 1? Flavor-wise, the ball pit is what Vorthos and Melvin would co-write in their dream journals over a motel breakfast the morning after a...
Welcome back, Cube enthusiasts. My name is Monty Devuti. I am joined by Hall of Famer Gab Nassif, and this is CubeCon 2025. We have just watched the draft for the prequel draft. That is what we're covering today. This is sort of the kickoff of the main event. The main event officially begins tomorrow, but we do have some Thursday action for you. There are still points on the line, and there is Magic to be played. So we are going to go down to it. We saw Joshua draft a pretty exciting deck in the ball pit here. But we are going to be watching him playing his Brian Evans here for round 1. So Joshua Skripik on the left side of your screen, that was our drafted hero. Brian Evans on the right side of your screen, we have no idea what he drafted. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and I will remind you, there are cube lists on the top QR code, the donation link for the Tiltify on the bottom QR code, and it is Brian kicking us off, as so many people will, with his Zalfir Void.
Yep, and a Chromatic Sphere. And a Memnite. Woo. All right. Aggressive start from Brian. Reminder that every card can be played as a Chromatic Sphere, which Brian did for one of these cards, and the decision to play Memnite over making a Chromatic Sphere down the line kind of implies Brian has an aggressive hand and values the body, whether it's for affinity, for damage, for both. And we see Joshua just lead with a sphere as well.
Yeah, Gaia Reach Sanitarium, the land for Joshua. None of the more broken uses of the card with something like Narset, for example, that we have seen in constructed paths. So likely a fair Gaia Reach Sanitarium here, but still having utility on the land is always welcome, as Memnite is going to get into the red zone here.
Yeah, constructed paths and current modern, combination. Narset Gaia Reach as literally playing a blue-eyed control deck this afternoon, and it's part of the blue-eyed Scepter Champ build that came in second at the Pro Tour. And this cube, it would probably more be used to maybe loot away a big creature, even though you can kind of, maybe not as effective in some other cubes since all your cards already have cycling in a way.
All right, so this is one that I wasn't sure how much we were going to see it cast on Joshua's side as a spell versus a chromatic sphere. But that's the Throne of the God Pharaoh. So at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. So an investment here of nothing essentially, but something that Joshua is hoping will pay off in the upcoming turns.
Yeah, Joshua picked a bunch of these kind of aggressive cards. Actually, when you mentioned it during the draft, I thought you were talking. I think I said something about 7 mana. You were probably thinking, no, yeah, not that, not Ferris card, and
Not gift of the God Pharaoh's gift, excuse me.
yeah.
But that would have been exciting as well, as we do have the stream lagging a bit. Just to talk about what is happening, Brian did sacrifice one of those spheres, and it was a Drownyard Temple. So that early excitement that we were getting as we will work on getting the video fixed for you all here. That early combo from that Drownier Temple, getting it into the graveyard, but using the green mana generated from the sphere to cast, I believe, Recrossing the Paths here? Recross the Paths. So revealing cards from the top of the library until you reveal a land. That card goes into play, and the rest go on the bottom of your library in any order. And then you clash, and if you win the clash, you get the Recross the Paths back to your hand. Welcome back to the booth with us. Apologies for the technical issues. We'll work on getting those fixed as soon as possible so we can bring you all of the cube action, not just today, but hopefully more or less uninterrupted throughout the rest of the weekend, as we have done a little rewind here to the point where Joshua will be casting the Throne of the God Pharaoh, and we'll see if we can proceed through the upcoming turns and get back to the Recross the Paths. All right, can we proceed?
Yeah, know that I would be kind of worried if I was Joshua, because Brian did not use his second mana on turn 2 to make another one of his cards in hand a sphere. So you gotta assume he likes his hand. Anytime my opponent would be not using their mana to play one of their cards as a sphere, I would just assume they quite like their hands.
All right, so apologies. It does appear like our feed for game 1 is not usable. So with that said, we will be going to game 2 of that match, and we will update you on who won game 1. Sorry for not being able to bring you all of the action as previously promised, but this is the pseudo purpose of the prequel draft here, is getting all of these little kinks worked out, so the rest of the weekend, especially as we work our ways up towards the culmination of the playoffs later on in the weekend, things will be running more smoothly. But we will be getting into game 2 when we're able.
Yeah, that's right.
Recross the Paths is interesting, right? Yeah, because there's the potential of a lot of high cost cards in both players' decks. So clash not really a given where either player is going to win it.
Yeah, you can play maybe fewer lands. It's actually going to be probably not the greatest against Joshua, because we saw he was a little on the lower side land wise.
Right.
And if he's on the lower side land wise, it's like kind of it all evens out, right? So I mean, other players have more lands in their deck. Nice little source of card advantage. For ones in limited, or in this case 1/1 for zeros, just creatures in general are not like the best. So curious to see what Brand comes up with as a follow-up. And as far as Joshua's deck, he was our future drafter, and curious to see if some of his, like how his deck ends up functioning. Really, I was not gonna lie. I hope if Joshua watches the coverage, he won't be too upset with me, but I felt like the draft was a little rough, and I would not expect Joshua to win the pods, but I hope I'll be proven wrong.
Well, we will find out on the other side of another break. We're not going to hold you here while we try to fix these issues. So thank you for bearing with us. We're going to take another short break and hopefully sort this out and be back on the other side with some cube action. Thank you very much.
Rorschach, can we share that with the audience? Like which cubes, what's the schedule of the cubes? Someone was asking in chat. Okay.